this is Lily Tang Williams, Immigrants Speak. Today, I have a very, very special guest. She is the first immigrant come to this show from Europe, from Czechoslovakia. And I'm going to let her introduce herself and tell you her stories. But before that, let me give you a quick update. New Hampshire failed to pass the Parental Bill of Rights last 2 days. We were short by 6 votes. All Democrats voted against the State House Bill, HB 10, and 4 Republicans joined Democrats to table the bill. That means we cannot bring up until next year. So it's just not very good week. And I testify support this bill. And so that's one thing I'm worried about. Like we did not have a parents' rights in China and come to America. I'm fighting for parental rights here. It's just very, very worrisome. I'm sure immigrants like Katerina, you probably can tell the same thing. Like you're worried about America, and that's why you decided and come out to join me. So I really appreciate you have the courage to say, hey, I want to join this show. I want to tell my stories. It's just fantastic. You are here. So thank you so much for that.
Hello, and you're very welcome.
So go ahead and give people a brief summary about yourself.
Okay, so thank you again for having me. I'm very happy to be here. And okay, so my name is Katerina, as you heard, and I came from a country what used to be called Czechoslovakia, and now it actually is just a Czech Republic because we split from Slovakia in the 90s. So from a Czech Republic, from a city called Prague. My country is incredibly beautiful country. I grew up in a very, very beautiful country, but the problem was a communism, of course. So my country historically was very big and rich kingdom. We had, even one of our kings was the Roman emperor. So we had a rich history of democracy, which of course, after World War II, was interrupted by communism. Like in most of countries of Europe in 1948, communism took hold of not just Czechoslovakia, but also Germany, Poland, Romania, Soviet Union, of course. And so my generation really grew up in a poverty because by the time I was born, the communism was in my country for 20 years. And well, one of the reasons why I'm in America is because I was seeking a free country and opportunities. And even though I left after the communism fell in my country, there was always this mentality of communism. You know, the people just didn't. They are not still, I think, still not quite free in their minds. So they still under the influence of what it used to be, especially the older generation. So I came here to America 30 years ago to look for opportunities, and I got it here. And life was beautiful here. And lately, especially during COVID, I started to notice this totalitarian, authoritarian tendency from our government, and I worry about the America I used to know. I came to 30 years ago to seek opportunities. I worry that it's disappearing from our society.
Right.
There's more and more, government oversight, and I don't like that. So that's why I came up on your show.
So you basically were saying that you kind of wake up during the COVID.
Yeah, of course. Well, it's not exactly I woke up. I can feel the tendencies already before. The more and more you get government intruding in your life, the more you can feel it. I think we as immigrants are very sensitive to that.
Right.
But it was more, I didn't really want to believe that it would happen in America. But now I really see it happening, and that's a problem. And, life in government-controlled country is not fun.
But you said you came here by yourself. That means, for job opportunity. But
yes,
you still have your families all inside of Czech Republic today?
Yes, my whole family, my mom, my sisters, my nephews, nieces, they are all there. But Czech Republic now is free. We defeated communism in 1989. So the country is free over 30 years now. And it's democratic, and it's prosperous. And once again, it's beautiful. So we had relatively short 40 years of communism, but it was enough to destroy the country a lot, actually, and it took a long time to rebuild it.
So give us a little bit clue what was like when you were growing up, like what did your parents, your family do, and what was the living condition and like I had the food rationing coupons, and my parents worked for the state 6 days a week. And so I just remember I was hungry. Of course, I grew up under Mao's Cultural Revolution, was a totally, political chaos and propaganda every day, brainwash the youth. And so, did you see some similarities, like communist countries?
Yeah, definitely. Most
Yeah,
definitely. Most
childhood was
definitely. I think, well, one of the reasons why I started with saying that Czechoslovakia or the Bohemian Kingdom was a powerful, rich country is because when the communists actually took over, they had very good beginning. The country was very rich. The country had good industry, good agriculture. People lived well. So the communists started from a well-maintained country, but still they managed to destroy it in 40 years. It was nowhere near to where it was. So I think when you look back into the history of communism in my country, you see that at the beginning people actually believed it. And I believe in China, probably people at the beginning.
Oh yeah, they bought into it.
Yeah, they bought into it, and they thought that it's going to bring them better life and better equality and better, everybody's going to kind of be the same, and there will be no rich and no poor. And I think that is exactly the stage where United States of America are finding themselves today. There is a lot of people who believe that whatever this liberal agenda is, it's going to bring them better life. And there is a lot of people who believe that, it's people will be more equal and there will be no poor people and stuff like that. But that is absolutely false.
They don't call equal anymore. Equality, they call equity.
It's equity now. Yeah, I know. That the communists didn't go that far, right? Communists didn't have equity.
Chinese communists promoted equity the whole time because the equity is an equal outcome. They want everybody to have equal outcome.
But they
were never equal. Most people were equally poor in enslaved. But the people who are politically ruling class, elitists, and Communist Party officials, leaders, they were not the poor. They were not starving like the poor peasants, right?
Yeah, of course not. Yeah, exactly. So that is the problem with the communism. They talk about, or with the dictatorships, with the authoritarian regimes, that they keep talking about equity and equality and all that, but they really don't want to bring it. They don't want to bring it to the people. They just want to create two classes where one is very poor and the other one is invisible. So you don't even know. I don't know how it was in China, but in my country, the big shots in a Communist Party lived behind the walls. We didn't even know what they have and what they don't have, right? They were very rich. They had servants. They had, beautiful cars. We didn't even know. But we were told that they have to be a little richer because they have to take care of us, right? So that was their equity or equality or something like that.
Did you have a food rationing? I mean, were you that poor?
So I was kind of getting there. The food rationing existed in my country right after World War II, but after that we didn't have it. But that doesn't mean that we had enough food. We never had enough food. Americans are used to that. They go to a butcher shop, and there is pork and lamb and beef, and there is the front part of the cow, and there is the steak, and there is the tenderloin. And they come in a shop and they say, "I want a piece of tenderloin." Oh, and I don't want this one. I want this one.
Well, yeah, lots of choices. And I love to go to the grocery store here when I first came here.
Right. And when I was growing up, you come to butcher and you say, "I want meat." And whatever they have, it might be beef, it might be pig. It's probably not going to be a good meat because the good meat was all reserved for the leading party, for the ruling class, right?
Yes.
You just get in a newspaper, you get a piece of meat and you go home. And you might have a family of 5 and everybody gets a little piece for lunch like this, right? And that's all you have. So we didn't have rations, but we didn't have enough food.
So what did your parents do? What did your parents do? Did they have good jobs with the state?
Yeah, my parents had good jobs. So my father was the chief of printing company. He was like the chief printer. It was a good job, but it wasn't a great job because he refused to join the Communist Party. So because he was never in a Communist Party, his pay was much lower than if he was in a Communist Party, he would be getting more money.
So how come he did not join then?
Well, when I was growing up, the communists allowed some people not to join. So when the newspapers from foreign countries came, it looked like not everybody is in a party, So they allowed some people not to be in a party.
So he wasn't qualified to join.
Well, I guess, but he just refused. He just didn't want to do it.
He didn't. Maybe he kind of had his questions, right? His
Well,
doubts.
yeah, of
So he
course.
did not join. How about your
Well,
mom?
we grew up hating the communists, everybody, right?
Oh.
So my mom wasn't in a communist party for a long time. But then when I was 14 and I put my application to high school, basically the employer called her up and said, look, you have to join the party. Otherwise, we're not going to get your daughter to the high school. So she joined the party because otherwise I couldn't go to high school.
You couldn't even go to high school if your parents were not party
No,
members?
because both parents were not in a party. So that was a problem,
So
So
they
at
did
least,
not trust you even to go to the government high school.
yeah. So at least one parent had to be member of the party. My mom was actually assistant doctor of epidemiology. She was doing like infectious diseases, and so that was a very good job too. And still, we never had enough money. We never had enough food. It just everybody was equally poor, as you said.
So she joined for you, so you could go to high school.
Yeah, I remember she came home and she had the application, the paper in her hand, and they had such a fight with my father, and she was crying, but yeah, you have to do it for your kids, right?
So life was kind of stressful because they maybe had even some disagreement. Yeah, your dad did not want to join, but she had to join for the kids' sake.
Yeah, you have to, because the educational system was all, you know that, right? The educational system was all controlled by the government. The parents had no rights in school. This is what you're gonna learn, right? This is what the school subscribes, to learn, and and then that's what it was basically.
So did you have like your teachers were all like party members?
Of course, we couldn't say we in Czech language we have this. We address people in a polite way, right? So we says ma'am or sir or something like that. And during communism, we couldn't use these words. We have to say comrade. So
what a common ground! My mom and dad call each other comrades too.
Yeah.
In China,
So
there's no gender, there's no man, woman, wife, husband. It's always comrades, right?
Yeah, it's comrade teacher always. Yeah. So we had genders. We had genders, but that's because Czech language actually has genders. You probably know in the Slavic languages we have the ova ending for the Czech for the surnames, right? Mm-hmm. Like you probably know the tennis player Martina Navratilova, right? Mm-hmm. The ova means female. So because of the structure of the language, we had genders, but everybody was,
So did you have to join, like wear the red scarf?
Yeah, we were the members of Pioneer. Yeah, and then later on we were members of the socialistic youth. We were
you call socialist youth, huh? We call communists. We were like a red scarf. That means a young pioneer. That's the common word for communist country. Young pioneer, red scarf, communist youth, then the Communist Party. So like a 4 levels organization. So you had a similar system.
Similar, yeah. We had the pioneers, and then we had what we call the socialist youth. So that was like the communist youth in China, yeah. And then after that, you apply for party, and then you have like a waiting time before they like say you're worthy of the party. And then I don't know, 5 years later, you can become the full-fledged member of Communist Party. I never made it because the revolution came before that. So, but
were you kind of brainwashed and pressured to join those organizations?
No, actually, no. It was. How would I say that? People were joining, these organizations. Kids were pioneers, and we all joined. But it wasn't because we were brainwashed. It was because we were afraid. Yeah. So if you want to have a normal, easy life, less normal in that sense, right? Mm-hmm. You just join the party, because if you don't join the party, your life is not going to be.
Right.
There was a lot of restrictions, and there was a lot of persecution, and but despite all that, there were people, of course, who were fighting against the communist regime. There were people who advocated for free speech and freedom and all that, and that's because of that we were able to actually have 2 revolutions against the regime. One in 1968, and that one was not successful. So the 70s, when I was growing up, were like the worst period of the communist regime in the whole history of it, because they were just locking people up, shooting them, putting them in the jails. A lot of people emigrated at the time. But then in 1989, we tried again, and that time it was successful. It was just too strong. Everybody joined, and it was called Velvet Revolution because there was no violence in that revolution. But the government abdicated, and we were free. So we are free. My country is free from 1990. Yeah.
Well, I wish China would be like that.
Yeah.
So I mean, like China is still one-party dictatorship, and still people are pressured to join the party. Otherwise, like you say, you don't get good jobs, good benefits. I just heard the millions, like Chinese college graduates are looking for jobs, and they have to pass like the civic test in order to like get a one government job. Like lots of people fighting over because the economy is not so good,
Yeah.
and so they might not even believe the party, but it's self-interest. You have to.
Yeah, you don't believe it, but you have to survive. Exactly, you have to survive. That's exactly what it is, right? Well, when I was growing up in the 70s, see the communists or the leading the leading party, Communist Party. I know that a lot of Americans always say, "Oh, but you didn't live in communism. Communism is different economic system." So I want your listeners to understand that when I say communists, I'm referring to the leading party. And I'm also referring to the political system, not the economical system. Yeah. So they owned everything. They owned all the all the farms, all the factories, and everything. So they had everything under government control. So yes, we did have our own, car maybe or apartment or something like that. But it was. The rule was very strong, and the government controlled pretty much everything. And one interesting thing about the jobs is that when I was growing up, to be unemployed was illegal, because in communism, or in my type of communism, you had not only a right to work, but you had obligation to work. So everybody had to work. So therefore, we had a lot of jobs on the market, but there was not enough actual work. So I remember sitting in an office and not doing anything, because there was 7 people on a job what one person could do themselves. But because we couldn't be unemployed, they had to pretend that they have enough work for everybody.
You must work according to them.
You must work.
It's your national duty.
Exactly, yeah. So people work in these state-owned factories and enterprises and farms because there was nothing private. And of course, because they created these, that's like printing money. Communism was printing jobs, basically. So because they created these non-existing jobs, nobody was getting any money. There was not, the pay was very little,
And because the economy was always very, very, weak and small, and nobody was prosperous under those kind of systems.
Exactly.
So they control everything,
Exactly. And I think it also ruined people mentality, because people learned to cheat. People learned not to apply themselves, because if they apply themselves, they still didn't get more money, right? If they work harder, if they were better on their jobs, they still did not get more money. So people are like, why do I have to work, right? Yeah. People learn to cheat a lot because everything was state control. So if you want to get like better meat, you go to the butcher and he saves something under the counter for you, right? So that's cheating, right? If you want a better plumbing in your house, you call the plumber and he comes illegally and you give him cash and he will do the work for you illegally. So there was this underground shadow kind of economy where people learned how to cheat, right? Because they just couldn't do what they wanted to do.
The law, the system made everybody a criminal.
Yeah, exactly.
It's like, and basically everything illegal.
Yeah, exactly. And then, so I think the people of my generation and, the generations before, in a way, were mentally damaged, because all they knew how to go around the system, how to find the loopholes, how to cheat. And,
to survive, to have a little bit more cash in their hands.
Yeah, exactly. Because there was no incentive for them to work harder in their jobs, because they're not going to get anything out of it anyway. So they didn't, but they learned how to go around it.
Well, same thing like in China, all moms had to work. You could not choose to stay home with your infants. And all the kids had to go to some factory daycare. Sometimes they charge you too. You couldn't afford it. That's why my grandmother was babysitting me and my little next brother. And because the childcare was too expensive. So when they say, oh, communism, everything's free, that's not true. We couldn't pay for childcare. But you must work.
Yeah, you must work, but you don't get any money. So you don't have any motivation to work harder.
Well, you just go there, just kill the time, and everybody's hanging around.
Yeah, everybody was kind of hanging around, pretending to work. Every time, I remember when I was working for bank when I was younger, every time I hear the boss on the hallway, I start to shuffle some papers, right? Because other than that, I have nothing to do really. But I don't have motivation to do. I don't have motivation to do anything.
And so boring too. Just
yeah, because even if I work harder, I still don't get more money. I don't get more recognition. So why?
So that's why that system is so bad, because you don't allow people to be empowered, motivated to work harder, to be creative, and to be entrepreneurs, so they can make more money. They can keep more what they earn. Yeah. But it's like, okay, everybody's poor.
It goes back to the system anyway. Yeah. So why?
I know. It's like And I have seen that in China too, when people sometimes don't do anything, just stand around, but a guaranteed job and drink tea, and but everybody had to go to work 6 days a week. And if you don't get a food rationing coupons.
Yeah.
So you must go to work.
Yeah.
And but then my mom, dad were always in debt, because even when they're working full time 6 days a week, they could not afford our childcare. They could not afford our schools. Even the government, the compulsory schooling were not free. So everything they sold to us at the beginning of communism was all lies, right? You see people bought into that. Oh, sounds wonderful, right?
Yeah, no,
but the reality is just all terrible.
Yeah, it's not wonderful. Talking about the government control. So, for example, again, I don't know how it was in China, but in Czech, the housing was controlled by government. So there was always shortage of apartments, shortage of housing, right? So they started to build these ugly, I had it in a PowerPoint, but we cannot start it, right? They started to build this ugly concrete housing projects, right, for people. And even with that, you had to put yourself on a list. And then the government approved if you can get the apartment, even in that ugly concrete structure, they had to approve if you can get an apartment or not. So if you were not in a party, forget about it. You're not going to get, you're not going to get apartments. So people were waiting for their apartments for years. I remember when I was young, I started to live with my boyfriend, and we couldn't get apartment. We were not married, so so there was no chance for us to get apartment. So we were living with his parents, and that was that was small apartment. His parents had like 1-bedroom apartment. So we stayed in a living room, they stayed in a bedroom. We had the same kitchen and same bathroom, and we lived like that for like 5 years because we could not get our own apartment. Right?
Yeah, right. And 3 generations live in China that time because, like you said, always shortage of living quarters. So 3 generations. I remember my grandma had like 1 room. I don't know how she raised, like all the kids. And I just remember my uncle had to go to her bed, behind her bed, with a little like a mosquito net as divider, have a little tiny place for him to sleep. Yeah. And another uncle had to travel to my mom dad's apartment and to use like a 1 bed we had. So he had to take a bus or ride a bicycle two stops and to sleep there. It's just like it's always a shortage of, even they call that a workers' row house, like 8 families share just 1 bathroom.
Yeah.
Like, very primitive, but still you could not have enough space to live.
Yeah,
because they're controlled by government.
I think in my country it wasn't as bad. First of all, we are a small country. We don't have that many people, but yeah, there was definitely shortage, and we definitely have 2 or 3 generations living together. That was normal. You couldn't get your own apartment, and also for workers, when people travel for work, they had this like dorms, I would say, where like 3 or 4 adults would live in 1 room together because there was no way that they can get apartment in a place of work. So they would just go to these factory dorms, I used to live in one too. It was not fun. So yeah,
it's short of everything. So what was like in healthcare? Like when you had to get sick, you had to go to hospitals and see doctors.
So healthcare, again, let's keep in mind that the communists when they came to my country, the country was very rich at the time. So they were using the resources from the past of the country. So at the beginning, the healthcare was okay. They nationalize it. So all the doctors have to be members of the party, right? And they had to subscribe to the national health insurance. They couldn't take private money. They couldn't have private practices. But it was still okay. But as the years go, by the time I was, in the 70s, 80s, when I was growing up, it was horrible. We didn't have good medical supplies. We didn't have good medical equipment. I think my mother was a doctor, so I know that the doctors tried really hard to be a good doctors. But you have an outbreak of infectious disease, and you don't have enough sanitizers. No matter how good doctor you are, you still cannot provide the care to your patients because you just don't have the equipment or you don't have the supplies. We had shortage of antibiotics, or we had shortage of aspirin, or something like that. So, so the healthcare, of course, there was a national health insurance, so that didn't pay much, right? And the doctors were not exactly rich. Same thing. They didn't have motivation to work harder because they couldn't have private practices anyway. Everything was state control. The supplies were state control. The equipment was state control. They had to apply for the equipment to get in their offices. That took years to get a new, X-ray machines or something. So yeah, it was not great. Yeah.
Was it expensive for you go to pay? Like, we couldn't sometimes even afford. So that's why we did not have preventive care. We did not have like once a year exams, and people always sometimes discover their diseases too late already. Like my own mother, she never had a preventive care, and went to the government run clinic. And when she was in had to go through like the gallbladder removal surgery, they removed her gallbladder because she bleed a lot. They gave her infected blood. And so my mom got this infected blood, syphilis all over in her brain, destroyed her memory, caused lots of memory loss. But she had no idea what happened until I brought her to this country. It's like, oh, you had this disease. You did not know, say no. So the antibiotics just kill it. Because people cannot afford to go to see a doctor to check the blood, to the comprehensive physical once a year. I mean, could you afford easily go to see doctors? Well, your mom was a doctor, so that helped.
No, not really. But well, it was different, right? Because this is what they're saying. Everything is free in socialism, right? Or in communism. So in a way, yes, it was free. But they just couldn't do anything because they didn't have enough equipment and enough supplies. So that's basically what it is. So you go to doctor.
It's useless.
Yeah, you go to doctor. You can go to doctor, but they cannot do anything for you anyway. They cannot do any tests because there's no money to pay for it, right? Because you cannot pay them cash. You cannot give them your own money. You have to use the national health insurance, but the health insurance doesn't cover anything. So it just covers some, basic visit or something. But then when it comes to medicine or some more difficult procedures, you put yourself on list. And you have to wait until it was your turn to get the treatment because you couldn't get it right away. That insurance didn't cover anything right away. Yeah. So I had friends who would wait for surgery, for months and months. And by the time they finally got to the surgery, the problem was much bigger, So that was a problem. But in a way, we would be even happy to pay them, but we couldn't. The doctors couldn't take private money. Yeah, it was restricted by law. We had to use the national health insurance.
So it's good you had a special talent. You're like a professional dancer. I saw your pictures were gorgeous. So during the 70s, when you realized, if I could leave, I wanted to go to the United States to dance.
I wanted to.
Right?
Yeah, I just wanted to go somewhere. The United States were not exactly, when I was growing up, most of my friends and my generation would emigrate to Austria or Switzerland or West Germany because my country is right in the middle of Europe. So that was kind of what we were thinking of. This happened by accident because friends of mine actually emigrated here to Massachusetts. And they started to work for the Fred Astaire Dance Studios in Massachusetts. And they called me and my former partner if we want to come, because America was looking for talented dancers at the time. This is back in the 90s. So, so we said yes. But at the beginning, we just wanted to get somewhere. And one of the reasons why we were trying to be really good in dancing is because the Communist Party needed somebody to represent them, right? So they need somebody who is good in something. So when you were good in something, they gave you visas and you could travel. It was a very difficult process to get anywhere, really. But, chances were when you were good at something, you will get the permission to go and travel to foreign countries. So we were trying really hard to be good dancers, to be able to travel outside the country, because normal people were not allowed to travel.
Yeah, well, I remember the propaganda machine of Communist Party always needed people are good singers, dancers, and performing artists, so they can promote their propaganda, right?
Yeah, exactly. They can say, look, we have such a good artist, so the communism is right. Yeah.
So which year you actually left, and you're still that time a communist country? Which year was that?
When I left, it wasn't communist country anymore. I left in 1992, and the communism fell.
It ended in 1989, right?
1990. Yeah. So it was 2 years after the fall of communism. I left, but we say the communism fell already, but still, when I go back, I still see the mentality of the communism in the older people. I still feel it's the freedom in America, the way I knew it, before COVID, was different freedom than what it is in Czech Republic. And I know the Czech people don't like to hear it, but the young generation, I think, is starting to understand what freedom is. But the old generation, people of our age, they understood that they can be free now, but they didn't quite understand what it is. you know.
Well, you
So
think it's years of propaganda and
yeah,
mind control,
yeah,
and also this mentality, just you know what, I just want government to do something for me. I rely on government; they should be the solution instead of hey, we need to promote the free market and
mm,
capitalism and free enterprise and reduce
mm,
regulation, so we all can be incentivized, go start business, go create something for ourselves to pursue better life. And maybe because younger people, they were born later and they were not so indoctrinated, so they're more like hey, let's do
yeah.
something, let's advance our life, right, have prosperity.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. So, I think they're more likely to learn what it is to be free. And hopefully, the problem is that even in Europe now, unfortunately, even in Europe and even in former communist or socialist countries of Europe, the young people started to be indoctrinated the same way the American young people are. So I
Oh,
really worry that the communism is coming back, but it's not coming back just in the United States. It's global now. It really is global. And
yeah, so you and I
that really,
recognize that it's global, it's scary, isn't it?
yeah, and that really worries me, because people don't understand. As I said, I have been to China because my husband is Chinese, and I've seen the poverty people live still in China. And I have to say that my country, when it comes to the general life, wasn't as poor as China. We had communism much all the time, and we started with much better country, at the beginning. But the lack of political freedoms, I remember when I was young, there was no freedom of speech, no freedom of press. You couldn't assembly, you couldn't. The state had this KGB, the state police. They keep monitoring everybody. If you stand on a corner of the biggest square in Prague and it's more than 10 of you, you would have a person who would come in a like dark coat and dark hat, and say, disperse, disperse, don't gather here, don't gather, don't gather, spread around. It was like they were worried that we would start a revolution when it was like 10 of us or something. They were so afraid all the time that they keep tightening up the control, and
That's how communists think today. They
yeah,
never trust the
yeah,
people, and they always worry about lose control, lose power, and everybody is a potential enemy of state to their
exactly.
power
Oh,
for existence.
my grandma was enemy of state. Do you want to hear the story? Was my grandma was enemy of people?
Yeah, what
Because
happened to her?
in 1968, the generation of my mom, right, they tried to get rid of communism. So they started to create this freer society, right? And they started to feel like they maybe can get out of it. And they sent a delegation to Moscow because we were not part of Soviet Union, but we were one of the satellites of Soviet Union, right? So the Moscow Communist Party was really dictating to the Czech party and the Polish party, and they were dictating what to do, even though we were not part of the Soviet Union. So they sent my government basically sent a delegation to the Moscow Communist Party, and they said, look, what if we do it a little bit different so people are a little bit happier? Maybe we can allow them to have private businesses or something, right? Well, the Moscow party didn't like it, right? So they sent tanks to Prague. And again, if we get a chance to open the pictures, I put pictures there, tanks in middle of the beautiful historic city of Prague. They were shooting everywhere. I was a little child, but I remember that, there were tanks on a bridge next to my house. And this one time we went down the street, and I remember my mother shielding me because they were driving the tanks around, shooting into windows,
Wow.
And so that was that. So the revolution was suppressed. It didn't succeed, and we started to have the process of normalization in my country in the 70s. And during the process of normalization, Russians or the Soviets put a lot of soldiers in my country, in Prague, and they would live in apartments. They would give them apartments in Prague. And my grandma's family used to own, before the communism, they used to own a couple of buildings in Prague. So when the communists came, they took it away from them. But they let my grandma to be like a super, in one of the buildings. So she had to clean the building, she had to take care of the common areas and stuff like that. So they let her live there, but she had to clean. So they put these soldiers, the Soviet soldiers, into her house, and the Soviet soldiers didn't know how to use toilets. They were just so. Those are kids from villages somewhere. They never used flushing toilets. They were poor people from Soviet Union, and so they made a lot of mess. And my grandma had to go and clean it. So she went to the local Communist Party committee, and she said, I don't want these people there. I don't want to clean after them. They're pigs. They don't know how to live in a civilized world. and the party put her on an enemy of people list. So that's how my grandma became enemy of people.
So what happened to her? What happened to her then?
Well, nothing happened. She could never travel outside the country, right? And they keep keep watching her basically.
She was on blacklist after that.
Yeah. So the moment you express any alternative, viewpoint, even a view on the soldiers not being able to use the flushing toilet, in that moment you were just subject to persecution. Yeah,
it's amazing to me. Always hear story like that. Like and some countries were relatively free, prosperous, and you even had a flushing toilet at that time. Then when the communists took over, they just ruined everything. Same thing happening in Cuba, Venezuela, even China before communism was relatively better, a lot better in terms of, like living conditions and, had a private properties, and the communists just destroy it.
Yeah.
So
they didn't have any respect for any human rights. All
they don't respect private property, do they? Right?
They don't respect private property. They don't. So in Czech, you could own a little garden and have a couple of chickens there. When you were somewhere in a village. But so that's why the village people were very rich, right? Yeah. Because they have chickens and they can sell the eggs. And there was this whole, in my country, there was this whole like shadow underground kind of markets when people would exchange goods, and but it wasn't it wasn't legal. So.
Yeah. So now you live in the United States for a while, and I mean you are like I guess very happy living here, but you become very, very worried. I mean, for a few years now. What is biggest worry to you that you see what's happening here? You think that because people are use the similar terms, tactics we recognize?
Yeah. I recognize the language. I recognize the slogans. The whole every communist country I know. Again, I don't know how it was in China, but every communist country I know in Europe was living by the principles of Marxism-Leninism, right? And Marxism-Leninism is based on what they call the class struggle, right? You always have oppressor and then you have oppressee, right?
Yes.
And we had to study it when I was in the school. That was like, you graduate from math and Czech language and Marxism-Leninism, right? So, and Russian language also we have to do, right? So, what I see here in America, suddenly, it's different. It's not economic. It's not the bourgeoisie and the proletariat, the working class now. It's different. Might be race, might be sexual orientation, but they starting to create these classes. They starting to create this class struggle, and they starting to create this. Like what the Marxism dictates.
It's called cultural Marxism. That's why.
It's basically the same principle, right? It's the historical struggle again. This time it's not the rich people against the poor people, but it might be white people against black people or straight people against gay people. But they started to divide us into classes, and they starting to teach young people that we actually have a problem, that we actually have, the oppressed and the oppressors, and that is not true. I don't believe that is true in America, but I see that they teach it to the young people, and the young people believe it. And
no,
also
everything's about trends, right? Like if you don't want the kids to learn something age inappropriate stuff, or the American is a systemic racist country stuff, and so now it's like they're turning kids away from parents.
They basically teach them the principles of Marxism, but on a different level, right? So Marxism was saying there is the bourgeois and proletariat, right? And they saying there are straight people and then there are trans people, So they divide people in classes, and then they say, well, those two classes can never understand each other. But that is not true. America for centuries, lived in harmony. So
this is like a melting pot. Like we are immigrants, we come here, we're living American dream. We love America. And I never look at people judging them by their skin and race. And when people ask me, where are you from? Because my accent and my look, I don't feel offended. Everybody was super friendly.
Yeah.
And you know what they did just in my middle school? They want to do community outreach by this, like basically equity related group from university. The first video they show to the entire group is a Black young man talking about when people ask him, where you're from, he feel offended because he immediately assumed they ask him that question in a very white state like Vermont, and they are white racist. It's like, but I live in New Hampshire, very white state. When people ask me that innocent question, I don't take offense. I tell them, I'm from China,
Yeah. And it's the same.
They assume people are bad to ask you that question.
I mean, I have the same thing. Well, obviously, I'm white, but so I don't have that problem. But the moment I open my mouth, people go, "Oh, where are you from?" And I say, "Hey, I'm from Czechoslovakia." And people usually say, "Is that Yugoslavia?" And I'm like, "No, there is more countries, Slavic countries." And I don't get offended. I get more like amused, that people
Yeah,
don't
you can
know
have
anything.
conversations about each
Yeah,
other, right?
so I say, "Oh, we in the middle of Europe, we next to Poland and Germany, and and we have a conversation about it. It's nothing offensive about it. So I'm an immigrant, so I have an accent. That's okay. You don't have to always get offended about everything."
But the sense of they want you to have that in your head. They put that
They
in your
teach
mind.
they teach the kids
They
to
teach
think like
the
that.
kids.
Yeah.
It's all about racism now. Everything is racist, right? Everything
Yeah.
is about racism. It's about transgender rights, and the parents are incriminated. You don't need even parental rights anymore when it comes to your kids' education. And if they want to transition, it's okay not to tell parents. It's like it's insane.
That's
It's
not
so
correct. Yeah.
worrisome.
Yeah. Well, but that's exactly what we remember from our youth, right? The government has absolute control over your kids, right?
Yeah.
They teach your kids what they want to teach them. The parents are not there to interfere, right? And that's really worrisome. Yeah, that is something I worry about. And the whole propaganda machine I'm worried about, because they use the newspeak in a way. If you read Orwell, you understand what I'm talking about. They actually use newspeak. They change words.
Yeah. Also, they do not understand what the free speech is anymore. Free
Yeah.
speech, people have freedom to tell you how they think, what they think, even though they're not politically correct, but they want to shut you down. You can lose your job, lose your career. So Americans living in fear, like walk on high, like a thin ice.
And
I
that's
feel like
exactly
back in China, everybody you cannot trust anybody anymore, right?
right. And that's exactly what I remember from my childhood, that people would say different things in a public, and people would say different things in a family, right? And when I was growing up, we all hated communism. There was nobody I know who would be brainwashed and believed in the communistic theory. We all hated them, but we were so afraid that we would lose our jobs or we would be kicked out of the school that we didn't say anything. We just, in the public, we say what they want us to say.
Well, in China, you just disappear. You go straight to like neighbor camps.
Yeah,
So
yeah.
you cannot say anything. It's like learn that lesson. And the thing is, though, that America today seems like Americans they never lived without freedom.
Yeah,
It's like
they don't
let's
know.
see
They
what's
don't
going
know.
on today. Lots of people don't even recognize. You call that
They
communism
don't
for
know.
us here, but they don't recognize that's communism
Yeah.
or Marxism.
And again, what we're saying is not communism as an economic thing, but as a political, ideological thing. And that
Yes.
they don't recognize. They don't recognize the ideological propaganda this state
Yeah.
is feeding them now.
And it's scary when they weaponize federal agencies to collude with big tech and to shut down scientists,
Yeah,
to
well,
shut
but
down
that's what
journalists, and to censor like what you post on Facebook, used to be also on Twitter, and even
and they
sometimes
censor it. Yeah.
it's like so they don't want you to know the truth, to keep you down in the dark. You don't know the truth, and you keep supporting their policies and their
Exactly.
propaganda machine from mainstream media.
Exactly. Well, it's a type of oligarchy, right? Communism was type of oligarchy. Very small group of people was controlling the whole society. What we're having here right now is oligarchy. Very small group of people is controlling the whole society, and people go with it. But, as you said, Americans don't know. They're like little children. When you tell them don't put your hand on the hot oven, they will put a hand there anyway, because they never experienced the pain from burn, right? So I think Americans are like little children. You have to, you can tell them it's going to hurt, but they don't believe you because they never experienced that.
And they openly promote Marxism, communism now. I just saw this post that Los Angeles, like a teachers union or something, they require people read most highly rated book is Marx Communist Manifesto.
Yeah. Well, that's
They're
what
not
I read.
even hiding communists anymore.
Yeah, that's what I read when I was little. But trust me, I didn't read it voluntarily. I had to read it because they forced us. But
yeah, we had to say long live, right?
Yeah. I remember wearing the red scarf and going like this, for our president.
Yeah, too. Yeah, we did same. Yeah, so people got to recognize this evil ideology. Yeah. It doesn't matter where it's practiced. It's all the same. They have no fundamental respect for all our human rights and traditional human values, human nature. They want to control you and dominate you and silence you. It's like now the tactic they use is control the education. So they can brainwash the youth, and those youth are the country's future, right? Means like I'm just so worried. I just saw the students all protest speakers on Duke University and called F-Nazis, but the other one who act like Nazis to shut down free speech. And you don't have to agree with speakers. You can have debate, you can have conversations. No, they just show up and chanting and shut you down. They remind me like red guards.
Yeah. You're absolutely right. And and again, we both grew up in a society where everything was controlled by government. And if you get something, you have to prove the loyalty to the ruling class, to the political class. And we getting there here, right? If you're not loyal to what the Democratic or the Liberal Party is saying right now, you are not getting the same treatment as if you are, right? So it's very worrisome. It's very, very worrisome for me. And I hope that there is enough people in this country who see it and who will not allow it happen. But as I said before, my country, 100 years ago was democratic, prosperous. It was a small country, but it was good country. It was rich party. We had a good life. And then when these communist propaganda started to come in, people were saying, maybe it's not bad. Maybe this will help the poor people or whatever they were talking about before. And there were some people who were saying, wait, don't do that. They will take over. And most of people in my country were saying, oh no, it's never going to happen here. We are intelligent. We are democratic. It will not happen here. And what happened? It did happen, right?
It happened quick, just like
It
Cambodia.
happened very quick. It happened over in 1948. At 1950, they walked into my grandma's shop. He was like a little merchant, he had shops and buildings and stuff like that. They work in his shop and they say, from now on, this shop belongs to the people. You cannot
people,
say
which is the government, the state, not really people, collective concept. People.
And they just threw them away from their shops, from their buildings, and that was it. 2 years. It took 2 years for people to be completely under their control. 2 years. So it goes very quickly.
That's why we cannot give up our Second Amendment right.
We didn't have one in Czech. So Czechs are kind of very, very.
People had no way to fight back when communists took over because you were disarmed already by then.
I think Europe is a little different than America, but it's it's one of the rights they just will take away from you. It's just that's it. Yeah.
So I really appreciate you spend time with me, and your story and like other immigrant stories are so critical nowadays in America. And I always wanted to do this show, but finally I was at the point to say, I have to do it now. I feel the urgency. I have to do it now. Not just me speaking now. That's not enough. I need to get other immigrants come out to warn our American citizens who don't recognize it, don't recognize what's going on, right? And then when that time comes, then we're going to live under communism again, or globalism,
or some kind of authoritarian,
whatever you call it. It's all collective, authoritarian tyranny government. And I don't want that to happen ever again. So I really appreciate it. But we will chat again, and we will try to show you PowerPoint next time.
Yeah, that would be great. I have some pictures
so
already.
Thank you so much for coming today. And we'll ask people to follow you on Twitter too. So if you like this show, please tell other immigrants and share with our youth and students and other parents, and follow us on Twitter and YouTube. Like and subscribe and share our videos, and support us by become member on locals.com. Since January I started the show, I think I got $36 so far from YouTube. Even haven't paid me yet. So we need the people who like our show, like our voices. Please support us, and we'll continue to do this Immigrant Speak every week. Thank you so much, Katerina.
Thank you for having me. Thank you for having me.
And we'll be in touch, and come back, okay? I
will.
Yeah, enjoying to watch you dance some more someday. Okay, bye.
Thank you. Bye-bye.